the best. I'm blessed to know that lust is a test. I used to be the victim, now I'm just envisioning. I'm knowing this is.
I'm Suzi Landolfi, and welcome to Be Crazy Well. Now, why would a therapist say that? Because we all have mental health struggles, even therapists. The good news is we have so much more information about how we can be crazy well. On my podcast, we don't focus on what's wrong with us. We want to know what happened to us. We're going to explore how trauma affected us, both negatively and positively. That's right. I said positively. It's called post-traumatic growth, and it's a real thing. Be Crazy Well will share mental health wellness practices, the newest mental health research, and most importantly, how we all get to create the person we deserve to be and the life we deserve to live. So join the mental health evolution and be crazy well.
To see within is to know yourself.
So welcome everybody to Be Crazy Well, and I couldn't think of a crazier well person than Adam Popp. So Adam, I haven't had the honor, pleasure, and joy of speaking with you for a long time. So the first thing I want to tell you is, what the hell are you doing that you look 10 years younger than you did when I met you 10 years ago? Like what?
Well, hopefully you're not recording this to put out visually, because I just got out of the pool, so I got some like goggle eyes.
Yeah, no, they're gonna see you too. They're gonna see you too.
I literally just got out of the pool like 30 minutes ago. So
so you have a house with a pool or at a complex with a pool?
No, I was at the community center here in
Golden,
Colorado. Yeah.
Okay. So, which I love Golden. I just want you to know before we go any further, I rode a horse in full Annie Oakley costume down the center streets of Golden, Colorado for your Wild Bill Hickok days.
Okay, incredible. Yeah.
And then I actually brought the horse in the saloon there. There's a big saloon there.
Nice.
Yeah. So I
need a picture of this. What year was that?
Oh my God. That was at least 15 years ago that I did that. Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
So I haven't seen Adam in a long time. So Be Crazy Well is part of a whole series of podcasts from a wonderful organization that supports veterans and makes sure that we can get out as much information as possible about resources, right? And people like yourself that make a difference and made a difference first in their own life. And then just by virtue of what you do and how you live, you inspire and help others. Like that's actually the best thing we can do for people is first do for ourselves what we're trying to help everybody else do. So I wanted everybody to know just a little bit about how you met me and what you remember about our meeting and how we've stayed connected all this time. And so what happened, your story about your change, because it's remarkable.
Yeah. So, as you know, I was in the military. So through my military service, I was injured in Afghanistan in 2007, went through a recovery at Walter Reed, spent about a year there. I lost my leg, so going through physical therapy. And then after I left the military, I was working, but then also on the board for a nonprofit called the EOD Warrior Foundation that supported military veterans, specifically in the Explosive Ordnance Disposal community. And through that nonprofit, we were doing retreats and offering other services and grant money just to help in any way we could, help veterans live better lives. So through that organization, I was put in contact with you through a mutual friend in probably like the summer of 2014. So we were trying to put on a retreat. I was given your name. I reached out to you. I looked back at our emails actually from October 2014. And we started like planning a retreat centered on this organization and bringing like 6 to 8 veterans out to your ranch in Malibu. We stayed at the Camp Hess Kramer there and did a whole bunch of activities through your planning and leadership, and just had an incredible time. One of my early memories was just meeting you on your ranch, and then we did all this animal assisted therapy. Great. Part of it was equine, but very early on I had a chicken on my head and we were like
well wait, that's very serious. That's called CAP, chicken assisted therapy.
Okay, yeah, and
Right,
I was wearing
psychotherapy.
I was wearing a
Psychotherapy.
cap on my head with a
Right,
chicken on top.
with a
of it,
chicken. So that's the double cap. So that was that.
Right.
Yes.
So
And
that was my, within like, I don't know, probably less than a day. That's where I was, and that's where we were in that space together. And you know, over the course of those 5 or 6 days, really got to know you, kind of your philosophy, and all the intricacies, I might call it, but just
wait, you just said your philosophy, and then you started to laugh.
No,
I
just like
want everybody to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, just your amazing like perspective on healing, and how it doesn't have to be, you know, in an office in a therapeutic setting, and just really like meeting the client and the veterans like in spaces that they want to heal in.
Right. So there's 2 things that I remember about meeting you. Number 1, you're standing on the beach. We're going to go stand-up paddle boarding, and it's 6-foot waves. And the guy that was going to paddleboard with us, a very famous surfer, I won't call him out, says, "Oh, we can't go, it's 6-foot waves." And I remember talking on the phone, go, "Well, we're going," because these are EOD guys. These are like, so you stay home and stay safe, Mr. Famous Surfer, but they're going in the water. So this other guy takes him out. And I remember that famous surfer came running down the beach an hour later. Once I said, "No, we're going, you just stay home, stay safe." And he's like, "Oh my God, they're in the water." I remember him jumping in the water. Before that, though, you're standing on the beach, you have on these wild swim trunks, and to the top part of your prosthetic is all painted wonderfully, not painted, but it's plastically wonderful colors, but you're holding onto another leg. So you have one leg next to you, and then like a cane, you're holding onto the other, and I'm behind you, and I'm looking you, watching out to the men going out into the surf. And I remember I walked up to you and I said, "So Adam, what are you trying to do? Decide which one matches your outfit better?" And you didn't miss a beat. You didn't miss a beat. And you looked at me and you went, "No, I just have to remind myself that they sink." And I go, "What?" You go, "Yeah, if it falls off, it sinks and it's gone." And I was like, "Oh my God, who knew that?" I didn't know that.
I found that out the hard way. I didn't know that until I found that out the hard way when I was scuba diving.
Like, who thought? Why wasn't? Never mind. We won't get into why they don't make prosthetics that float, but anyway, they didn't. And the second thing I'm going to tell everybody about you. So we do this game where you have to stand on these 2x6 pieces of wood that are about 18 inches long, and you have to hold each other up, and you have to make it across the desert. We call it the desert, but this, you know, part of my arena. And you can't do it alone. You have to do it. And there's my staff, they're trying to get the boards from you. And if you don't help each other. So I've played this 1,000 times. And you have on these sneakers that you tie. And so you start playing the game, and I look over and I see you take the laces out of your shoes. So like, because you have a shoe on your prosthetic as well. And then I look over and I go, "I don't know what he's doing, but I'm not gonna, you know, get involved, just gonna let the game go." And I look over again, and you have tied the boards to your feet. So now you can walk up and down the desert, helping your men and keeping the coyotes away. My staff and I look at each other with amazement, like, holy hell, no one has ever thought to do that. And I still have that close-up picture of those boards tied to your feet. And
yeah.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, as you work with the military, I'm sure you realize that you know, their adaptability and their ability to do more with less. Just, you know, that's one of the gifts that the service gave them. So
yeah, and
post-military,
right? I know you're trying to deflect how smart you are and everything. Oh, everybody in the military could have thought that out. That's not true. I have done this game with many military men and women before, and no one did that before, and no one's done it since. So,
so now the secret's out. So
the secret's out. The secret's out. So what I love was what I learned about you. Then I said, okay, this is a man who has lost a big part of his body, your whole leg, and everything that you thought you were going to do with 2 legs, and had to readjust and figure out. And then the first thing you did after you got well was you started to help everybody else. So there's that about you as well. And then, of course, I saw it in the game. What I want to talk about next is you also were not running. You were a bit overweight at the time. You were not in greatest of shape. Is that true? I mean, there were things about you that were not where you are now. So I want you to tell us and share a little bit about where you were and what you had to do to get to where you are now, and then tell us about what you're doing next as Superman. That's how I
Okay. Yeah, it's a lot. It seems like a short amount of time, but looking back, it's been 15 years at this point. Mm-hmm. From the time I lost my leg, and half that time I spent not doing much. I was working, and I think by anybody's measurement, I was living a successful life. Like I had a good job. It's kind of what we're told as military members, like get out, like get a good job. And that's like a successful transition. But my transition was really hard because, and I've learned out well after the fact that, what the military community gives you and that sense of identity, sense of purpose, like a cool story, like all these things that the military gives you and then takes away either on your retirement or that day that you're injured. I lost all those things, and I didn't realize how much that meant to me at the time, but it took 15 years or at least 7 or 8 to really put those pieces together and then start to build that in a positive light. So after separating from the military, like I mentioned, I was working for a big company. I went back to Afghanistan actually, because I thought that's what I knew and that's what I did. And that's what my sense of purpose was, I thought. So I went back to Afghanistan because that's what I knew. But still there were pieces missing, even though I had that sense of purpose again and somewhat of a community and identity. It wasn't the same. And, the more I worked with the EOD Warrior Foundation and other nonprofits, I started to realize like, oh, this is like my purpose now and my new sense of purpose and my new community. However much I wanted to maybe deflect or not force myself in that community, or not necessarily like feel like I was a part of that community, that was my new community at that point. So the persons with disabilities community and the veteran community. And it took me a long time. As part of that process, I was confused and trying to figure it out, and I drank a lot, as a lot of military members would do, I would say. And I'm sure you're well aware, but and it was like kind of ingrained not only in my service, but then after, like work hard, have a stressful job, and then you play hard. And that's like what my focus was. I was still like working hard, didn't really have these pieces together. And then I was playing hard with my new community, my friends. And that was like a large focus of my life. And I didn't know anything else really. So that's what I knew. And that's what I reverted to. In 2014, when we met, October, I was starting to do, what do they call it? Like those transformational like changes, right? Like just testing it out and seeing what it feels like and trying something new. And, I needed to do something new because what I was doing wasn't working. So in that October retreat, that's kind of when I started to like test the waters. I like stopped drinking during that retreat, and I was like leading these guys there. And as you always say, like, the hypocrite of me for so many years, like trying to lead these guys and then also being, kind of like somebody in, it was kind of a total mess, I guess. I was a hypocrite is what I was. So,
yeah.
So
I was going to say an effing hypocrite, because I am a licensed therapist, so I get to say that word when it's appropriate.
Yeah,
but you're right. You're right. The medical model is hypocritical. As the therapist, I can tell you what to do and then go home and not do it. I mean, that's perfectly okay. So I get that. All right.
Yeah, and that's something I've learned very early and clearly from you. So in October, so I did that retreat, and then I came home from that and then kind of fell back into my old ways briefly, albeit, but I did fall back into my old ways. And then in January 2015, I just kind of made a New Year's resolution. I was like, this is changing. And that little small change just kind of snowballed quickly. So in January 2015, I made that New Year's resolution, like stop drinking, had kind of a plan to do it for 3 months until my birthday, because who doesn't want to drink on their birthday? But then I made it to that 3-month mark in March, and I was feeling great, and other things were starting to align in my life, and I just realized like it wasn't helpful for me, and that was probably the cause of so many other things that kind of were holding me back. So in March, I just kind of kept going, and then briefly after, in April, I had this opportunity to join a team again with the EOD Warrior Foundation and do this relay race, but I hadn't ran at this point, and hadn't ran in 8 years, since my military service. So
Well, you haven't run without a leg either.
right, exactly.
For this prosthetic leg, because you don't have
Exactly.
one of those running legs that I saw, right? You've got a
That's
walking
right.
leg.
That's right. And
Okay.
I had a scuba diving swim leg that you saw on the beach.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was something, again, completely new, like a really big change, but something I felt, because of the previous like 3 or 4 months, like I was like prepared to do, and like felt, if I can tackle that like bigger thing that I already tackled, then like this should be easy. And I went back to Walter Reed and like got a running prosthetic, and long story short, I started on that track in their like physical therapy lab, strapped up to the ceiling, like running a couple 100 meters around a track, with a harness on, so in case I fell, I like didn't hurt myself. And then within the span of like 5 or 6 months, 5 or 6 weeks, I went back with the foundation, like finished that relay race, and it was just like one of the biggest wins to that point post injury. And it was like 3 miles, like not a very long run, but it took consistent trying, I guess, consistent like working out, consistency over that 5 weeks. It was like a lot of like walking at times, and a lot of like probably doubt at times, but each day I was seeing a little bit of progress. And by the time like that 6 weeks came around, I was like feeling pretty fit, and like finished that 3-mile race through the mountains in Washington State, and just kind of never looked back after that.
Never look back. Like that's, yeah. Now everybody's sitting there thinking, oh, and then he did another little 3-mile race, and then he did another little. No, tell us where you went after the 3-mile race.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question.
Well, you got. So I'm going to say something neurologically. You said it was the greatest thing that happened to me after my service. Like this was a pivotal moment. And when you said that just a minute ago, there was a little catch in your throat, because it is so profound when we do something that we either never thought we were going to do again, or we had come from anxiety and depression. Like you obviously had some of that from what you went through and what you were going to do with your life. So with that win, with that struggle to strength, it seems obvious to me that something in your brain is going to change, where you're going to get that dopamine, you're going to get that oxytocin, you're going to get that thought like, whoa, wait a minute, this is more of who I can be and I deserve to be than where I was for the last 7 years, right?
Right. And I mean, to your point, like on December 7th, when I lost my leg, and shortly after, I did start trying to train to run, but I had like a really bad fracture in my hip, and some other things going on, some necrosis in my hip that was causing the bone to die. So at the hospital, they're like, no high impact ever, which I thought on those early months, I was like, all right, it's like done, I'll never run again. And I never liked running before anyway. So it was a great excuse to be like, all right, like, and people would ask me, oh, you ever have one of those blades like the guy in the Olympics? Like, no, I didn't like to run before. Why would I do that now? But again, it was kind of that like that stuck mindset, that fixed mindset.
Yeah.
And again, in early 2015, when I started to like make those like little steps and little progressions, which spilled over to like so many other areas of my life, I realized like I went from that fixed mindset to more of a growth mindset, and just like every opportunity or every challenge, I saw a little bit differently at that time, like to your point.
So tell me, give us the sort of Cliff Notes or Wikipedia notes of going from that 3-mile, and then where did it go, and where are you now as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, do you want it from an athletic or a personal standpoint? So,
both. I want both. I can't separate the two.
Yeah. So, I mean, so around that same time in April, like, I was doing the physical stuff, the running, and staying consistent there. And then around the same time, I kind of changed. I was like dabbling in school before, very like dabbly, loosely. And I changed my my major, undergrad major, to like doing something more EOD related, what I knew, what I was kind of like thought who I was, to something that was more passionate to me, psychology. And again, with the EOD Warrior Foundation, kind of opened that door. So I started that program in psychology, you know, and was doing that kind of parallel to the work I was doing, both with a nonprofit and my company, and then also like the athletic stuff. So those like kind of parallels happened over the next like several years.
That's really important, by the way, because they are supporting one another physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually.
Yeah,
right?
undoubtedly.
They're also, and people don't figure that out. They get really good in one area and the other three suffer, or they get really good in the three areas and one suffers. And most of us do not understand how important they are. They are all connected. They feed one another, they support one another. So you're doing these 4 things that are literally changing you and helping you with your growth and wellness, which is amazing. Talk about congruent, you know, and supportive.
Mhm.
So you get an undergraduate degree in psychology. Then, and where are you running now? What in a year, where did you go from 3 miles to what?
So in that April 2014 or 2015, when I started and like did the 3 mile, and then I just kind of stuck with that, just that very simple like training plan of being consistent and going out 4 or 5 days a week. And then by that summer, I ran a half marathon. It was the Air Force half marathon in Washington, DC. And prior to my injury, I was in decent shape. I would say good shape and like a decent runner. And up until that 2007 event, like I had ran 1 half marathon in my life, and that's like the longest I'd ever gone. And it was miserable, and I paid for it for like days afterwards and was so sore, but I like kind of crushed it. And then, you know, in that summer, probably 4 or 5 months after starting to run, I like ran a half marathon without my leg faster than that previous time. So it kind of like planted another seed, like, wow.
Right. You ran faster with your prosthetic leg than you did when you had 2 biological legs.
Right. And it just goes to show like a little bit of training, a little bit of focus. It was a little low hanging fruit, but you know, it also goes to show that before I was kind of just like going through the motions and not putting a lot of focus or attention on what I was doing.
Right.
But, you know, with a little more focused and attention later on and consistency, then I was able to kind of surpass even what I was doing before I lost my leg. So, which again, on that date in 2007, December 2007, I like never thought that would be possible again.
So getting all these kind of growth wins, I call them, like, oh, I can do this. Now you're up to a half marathon. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So around that same time, I like reached out to a couple friends in the DC area. Again, military people who were in the para like triathlon realm. So like amputees doing triathlons. So I was like, oh, I'll try this out. Cause I was just a sponge at that point for anything new, any new challenge. So I started swimming and cycling and continued to run. And I was like horrible in the pool, but it was like a good challenge for me. And again, I was like there 3 or 4 days a week, just sucking so bad. Then I finally did my first like triathlon in August, and it was horrible. But again, it's just such a like proud like moment in my life that I was able to like get through this event. Again, like huge growth, although like very low hanging fruit at the time, and just like a big sense of accomplishment. And then that just progressed until November that year, like 7 months after I started running. I did a marathon, the Richmond Marathon, crushed that by my standard, I guess. And then just like continued like with the school stuff, the work stuff, the nonprofit stuff. Finished my undergrad in 2016 actually, and then started a master's program in clinical counseling. And you know,
so we get to meet up again, like everybody. So we're not done with horses yet with him, right? So he's at Georgetown, right? You're at
George Washington.
George
That's right.
Washington, right? And he brings out his entire cohort, calls me,
Right.
he brings out his entire cohort of masters. Some of them are getting doctorates, some are getting masters.
That's
They
right.
come out to Boulder Crest Retreat, where I was living at the time, helping to put the Warrior Path program together. And so he comes out, so we're doing it again. And I hadn't seen you really, I'd seen you a little bit here and there when you would come to Boulder Crest.
Right.
And your whole body had changed, obviously. Everything about us changes when we get physically healthier and more congruent, when our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are working in unison, when we're off of, doing off of principles. And once again, here you are with mostly a bunch of civilians. I don't know if there was any other veterans. And I can remember watching you be the leader yet again, even in the civilian world. So for me to watch the transition of you coming in and out of being with a lot of veterans and doing that, now you're in a running community, now you're in a master's degree program, was really, and I want you to know how powerful that was for me. And your entire energy, Adam, the horses noticed. Like the horses always like you, but if you remember, those horses just gravitated towards you. And we've got pictures to prove it, of you being around the horses and how much, because that's the other thing that happens, is that anxiety lessens, depression lessens, and your sense of self and where you belong in that place. There's actually nothing more to prove to anybody else. There's just some nice challenges for ourselves. And that's fine. But having to put ourselves under stress to prove to anybody else, that's very difficult and that's very stressful. And here I see this man now who had once had boards tied to his feet. Now just doing. So you finished that program, but and wait, we want to go between, you're back in school now, but you did something else that was interesting. Just give us a couple of highlights of what you ran and somebody you met and where you are now, because you did an interesting thing that I wasn't quite sure you're ever going to do. Because when you said you played hard, that did include women.
Oh,
You had a few women, right? You had some nice, wonderful women that were part of your life and dating. So tell us, you're in George Washington, and then where do you go when you're running in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it looking back, it just seems like a whirlwind at this point, but it was like methodical at the time. But yeah, just those first like couple years progressed so quickly. And after I finished the marathon and then like my degree program, undergrad, I just kind of started searching for what's next, and didn't have really like a plan together until I met a friend, someone who became a friend who was a big runner, and then they were training for an ultramarathon. So
what's that? How long is that at?
Yeah, so it's anything over a marathon, which I'd done a marathon at this point. So I was like, all right, and when I did the marathon, I thought, okay, that's it for the running world. That running challenge is over, because I did a marathon. But little did I know there was like this whole other community of ultramarathoners and trail runners and people who like to go farther than a marathon. I never knew that was a thing. So that was like the summer of 2016, and I found out about this, again, these events, and I like put a plan together, read some stuff, and then started training for a 100-mile foot race.
Wait. Okay, I'm just getting tired hearing this. I just have to take a breath. So 100 miles.
Right, which seems so completely foreign to me, and like no bigger challenge existed, right? So
Right.
Especially for one-legged guys.
Right. So is this on pavement or is this up mountains and down? What was this one? Because there's some of them are different.
That's right. So most of them take place on the trails, because it's hard to lock down an entire road for 100 miles for that amount of time as well. But so most of them take place on trails, and the one I was targeting, especially early on, was a little less technical. So some of them can be very like mountainous and have a lot of like terrain features, rocks, roots, and all that stuff. And especially running with a prosthetic for an above knee amputee, that's just really unstable. And I was really new to the process still. So I chose an easier 100-miler. That was a little flatter, and it was down in Texas.
It's like jumbo shrimp. How can something be big, small? Easier 100-mile.
That's right. So that was kind of the summer of 2016, and I was targeting a race about 5 months away, which was pretty soon. And I found a training plan and just kind of tried to follow that training plan as best as I could. to see if I could do that amount of like volume and mileage, which I was able to do. And then eventually, like a few weeks before this race, like signed up for it, and then went down to Texas with my brother, and actually met some other like friends through a veteran community that's assisted me along the way. So, you know, as you can imagine, running 24 hours, like you get tired and loopy, and they were able to run a few of the last like laps with me. It was like a 17-mile lapped course. So those like last ones in the dark were really hard. And, you know, just met this community that helped get me through that goal. And then it's like, all right, I guess finally finished 26.5 hours, and it was really hard. And again, just like, wow, like that was, not sure how I did that, but great. Good on you, buddy.
I mean, I'm just, you know, and when you talk about trails, I mean, I'm a dancer, I'm an athlete, I get it. I have both my legs, although they're kind of old now. And so I can feel my hips more, I feel my legs more, and I'm terrified of falling. So I can at least say to you, yeah, I kind of get that fear of falling because I'll break a hip, right? I get it. And I just want to say the idea that you, I mean, metaphorically, this is just wonderful, right? You were going from flat 3 miles, and you kept moving yourself up, literally up the mountain, which is, again, the metaphor of climbing that mountain, and you also challenged yourself. You said about stability and balance. So that idea that when you're running on terrain, rocky terrain and roots and all of that, that's a whole part of life. That when you can understand that's just a part of the natural world and our emotional world, that rocks and roots and trees and crevasses and all that, that's all emotional too. That's all part of our emotional life. And you don't create the terrain. Mother Nature created that terrain, right? So therefore now you've got to deal with something that you can't control. This is not a nice track that someone created. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that to me, that is so powerful about how you kept moving up the mountain and also challenging yourself without hurting yourself. Now, I really need to say this because it's so important. I work with a lot of people who want to keep challenging themselves. The trouble is they keep getting hurt. Not a lot of them, but some of them do, because they won't take, you said so many important things, a training plan. You could say a mental health plan. You could take a physical plan. You could take a financial planning. I don't care what you want, right? A dietitian or nutrition plan. But being able to follow a plan, to know that even though I want to do this more, I got to do this a little less today because of the plan in order to get somewhere. I deserve to plan and follow the plan as best I can. And that was the other words you said, as best I can.
Right. And it's huge, like understanding that self-awareness piece and that discipline piece to know where you're at, and like to pull back when you need to, and then to push when you need to. And that's like a part of that process over those 2 years too, was just like taking on some smaller challenges, like being able to accomplish those, learn from them, build some resilience, and then like continue to try bigger and better things. And
sometime around you were running, I suppose you must have stopped long enough to meet your wife. So how did all of a sudden that happen? Not all of a sudden, but how did that happen? And when in this growth and healing period, how was that happen? Do you have a sense of why she came into your life at that moment, why you were open? And
I don't know why, but I'm glad she did. And we're like, she's more adventurous than I am.
Wow, like, whoa, wait a minute.
More of a badass than I am. So to meet at the time we did was like very fortuitous, because she was back in DC, because she's, I mean, from not an early age, but like shortly after college, she was like living in Africa, and then she was living in Central America and South America. And so like our paths took these like similar journeys, and then we kind of met in DC during one of those like one of the lulls, I guess you could call it, lulls of adventure. And we met in like May 2018, and just like from our, I mean, we really bonded over running is what it was, and just like going out for runs and having like these really deep discussions during the runs, which is like, running became a form of so many things at that point, like meditation and just like a routine and all these other things. And she like came into that space and really met me there, and just like we had these incredible conversations during this like meditation practice is what I would call it.
I would too.
And yeah, and then she, like I said, had this crazy story, and we shared our stories, and just like, I don't know, it was like really crazy time of my life in a good way. And then I was like looking at, I was just graduating my master's program at George Washington, and I had all these other like crazy ideas on what was next, and like getting a van, and just trying to like, I was kind of over the DC area, so trying to figure out what was next. And she was just new in my life and helping me figure this plan out, even if it meant kind of leaving the DC area where she was. So she helped me like buy this van, and like we built it out and like made it a camper, and then we drove out to Colorado together, and ended up in Leadville. And we're just like in this very remote part of Colorado, going from sea level to 10,000 feet and running around a turquoise lake up there and camping. And this is like a few weeks after, maybe a couple months at this point, after meeting her, and she helped me like explore all these new areas again.
Right. But Leadville has one of those 100 miles. Isn't that a famous trail?
Oh yeah, they sure do. And it's like, it's one of the big boys, as they call it, one of the major
Have you
ones.
done it?
No, I have not. Long story short, it's a lottery process, so it's a little bit harder to get into, and I put in for it for 2 years and never got in, and maybe it's a good thing. It'd be a big challenge, but
you never know.
Yeah, maybe one of these
you
days.
Never know. And you've done Boston, because I'm from Boston,
That's
so I know
right.
you've done Boston, right?
A couple times. Was just there in
A couple
April.
of times. Yeah. So okay, so you're now in another program.
That's right.
Which I love, because I'm like you. I'm like, okay, I'm 72 years old, and I just got accepted to a doctorate program in leadership and change if I want to go, right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking, oh yeah, why not, right? They'll never get their money back though. The school loans will never get paid off. But anyway, just kidding. All right, so tell me what you're doing now. What's the plan now?
Yeah, sure. So, I've been living in Colorado since that van trip in 2018. So again, that was like a very cool, like exploratory journey for me. And we live in Golden, and I found out about this program about 2 years ago. And it's sport and performance psychology. So kind of melding those two experiences, the counseling side and the athletic side that I've been so involved in over the past like several years. And it kind of melds those together to really bring a mindset on your performance day or on your race day, but just really building your mindset on performance and just being as strong mentally as you can be physically.
Adam, has there ever been a time where the spirituality of running, because I'm a runner as well, not like you, not even close, and yet there's something about running, and I know the body mechanics that people don't realize this, human beings are capable of running 200 miles in a day. Like we have this wonderful heating and cooling system that allows us to do that. We may not be the fastest animal running on the planet, but we're the longest. We can go the longest.
Right.
And for me, though, there's a sense of, there's just I can't even describe it, but it's where I feel the greatest sense when I'm outside, whether I'm walking or running, just being outside. But that idea of running through and being aware of is that true for you? Did any of that happen while you're running? Where do you go in your mind and your heart when you're running?
Yeah, totally. And I think, for everyone, it's definitely different. Some people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to be a runner. I want to be able to do that. I just don't enjoy it. And I'm like, it's not for everyone, for sure. But I do think there is something for everyone, whether it's cycling or art or dance or whatever that may be, where you can get in those spaces and that activity and move your body and then feel that meditative state, or that feeling of just calmness when you're doing the activity. And every day is not necessarily calm. Some days you're running harder than others, but for me, going out there, on almost a daily basis, and just kind of getting in that mindset where, I can just go to nowhere or go to any place I want to be, and not think about anything, or is typically where I go. No music, but just getting in a mindset where, I can really find pleasure and enjoyment in something that I thought I had lost for at least 7 or 8 years,
Yeah.
So just really capitalizing on that, finding gratitude and some perspective, and just doing something that I've really grown to love.
Right. I think that word gratitude is very important, because we talk so much about loss when you leave something like the military. And of course, I'm with emerging vets and players, so I have retired professional athletes and combat veterans. And what is it that you can get even here when you're not playing that sport anymore, and or on that team, or in that unit? And I think what I was so struck by what you've done is you've actually brought yourself back into community, right? You're one of the things the military, with the men and women always tell me, is how much it forced them, pressured them, helped them, encouraged them to be better than they were before they went in. Like, it's very clear that there were things that they learned, and physically and even emotionally and mentally, that it helped. Even for those, as we know, have a lot of traumatic childhood, that's a life-saving step, going either into a professional sport and or into the military. So what happens is, when you come out of those, all that comes back. All of that comes back. It has to. It's been sitting. Some of it is actually superpowers. Others are not. I mean, it's the effect that can really hurt you. And so that loss of the team is one thing. The arising of the effects of trauma is another. And what I was so struck by, what you continually do, is you don't find, I want to say this with all due respect, I don't ever see you finding an end result. There's no end result. You probably get another degree. Like, you love learning. I always say there's two kinds of people in the world: people who want to know. They want to know. And there's people who don't want to know. Right. Do not try to wake them up. Do not try to tell them something they don't want to know. So it's the process of growing and healing, of accomplishment, of struggle, of challenge within yourself. Within yourself. That's really living. That's
and
living.
I think that growth, and always trying to strive to be at your 100. It's an ongoing, never-ending process. Like, you can never meet that goal, really, if you're trying to grow, right? So growth is a never-ending process.
I keep looking at the Boston Marathon, because I'm from Boston. I keep looking at the age and then the time, and I keep thinking, if I can just stay pretty healthy and get older, that gives me a lot more time to I can, you can run it in 6 hours instead of 4. And I'm like, oh yeah, just hang in there. So that's what I'm like, going, if I can beat the clock that way, that I might be able to make it in there. Last but not least, what is your next goal? I know you want to finish this program, of course. And what else do you want to do?
I mean, I'm surprised you haven't asked this question yet, or new, or
no. I don't know, but I'm thinking I might know.
Yeah, so I'm having a baby in October.
I was hoping you were going to say that, Dad.
Yeah, that's right.
When's the baby? When?
Which has been a long journey and a process as well. But October 6th, where my wife and I are having a baby boy, and that's going to be, again, another big adventure, and probably the biggest adventure and challenge yet. And I'm really looking forward to it. A little scared, but with any challenge, if you're not a little bit scared, then it's probably not a challenge. So,
well, it will be. It will be. They're very much a challenge. I'm a mother and a grandmother, so I can tell you it's definitely a challenge, worth every moment of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the things you've already got a process that I can share with you that makes perfect sense. I wish I had done it earlier. This idea of getting prepared to be a parent.
Right. And I'm so glad I am where I am now, and not 7 or 8 years ago. So.
Exactly.
Or 10 or 20 years ago.
That's exactly right. Now, if for any reason, to all the people that are listening, if you didn't go prepared to be a parent, start now. I don't care if they're 20 years old, start now, because when we change, they change.
Right.
You don't change your children. Like when you change, when you say, whoa, remember that stuff I used to make you do? And I said, that's not okay. It's wrong. It's bad. It didn't work. I'm taking it back. We're not doing that anymore. I'm sorry about that. I'll pay for therapy, you know. So that, I think that is, I'm so excited for you and your wife. Tell me your wife's name again.
Amanda.
Amanda, that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I've met her a couple of times, but I couldn't remember actually her first name. Well, I'm thrilled for you. And I know there are those wheelie carriages that you can run with. You've already got one.
Oh yeah, we already got one. Yep.
Yeah, I know you. That little kid's going to be like air blowing in its face. Like it's going to be so happy.
Yeah, that's right. Long. And until they're old enough to ride on that, I have a treadmill as well. They can sit right next to the treadmill.
Oh, that's awesome.
He, not they.
He, that's right. It's a he. A name yet?
No name yet, but we got some thoughts.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, I've been coming out to Denver, which is not that far from Golden, going to this wonderful Marcus Institute for Brain Health, which would, have you been there and met them there? Because if you haven't,
I have not.
All right, I'm going to hook you up with Spencer Milo out there. And so you should go see them, because what you're doing and what you're studying is really, really important. And they have a great guy over there that does a whole bunch of performance stuff as well, and stuff. So I'm going to hook you up with that, and I will let you know when I'm coming out to Denver again. All right.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. I'm not running with you though. I will sit and I'll sit and play with the baby, but I'm not running. Not with you. This scares the shit out of me. How much you
I run slow. So
oh, good. Adam, it's such a pleasure, such an honor. I mean, I feel so blessed to know you. I knew at the minute I saw you on the beach and met you at that retreat, I knew that you have a lot of courage and a lot of principles. You really live according to principles, which is the best and easiest way to live. It's the hardest way to live, actually.
Yeah.
It's the best and easiest in the long run, pardon the pun. Right. So it's just wonderful. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story.
I learned from the best. So thanks for all your support over the years and being a huge influence and kind of the path that I made, both professionally in the counseling field and just as a friend. So I appreciate that so much.
Well, great. All right, everybody, remember, just be crazy well, just like Adam. 100 miles, right? So yeah, I mean, I think we all deserve that. And the theme song is written by Calvin Love. It's called Be Your Best Self. So check him out on Spotify. And thanks again, Adam. Bless you. And we'll catch up soon in the real life. All right.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. That's right. Sounds great.
Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye.